The inaugural law of the Skyline Club wasn't etched in brass, but in the chilling, pervasive silence it demanded. Speak softly. See everything. Pretend you saw nothing. On this frigid Manhattan winter night, a night that felt carved from obsidian and urban starlight, Kendra Reed pushed through the polished mirrored doors. Her reflection, fleeting and defiant, showed a young woman fighting not just for her own survival, but for the very right to exist. One misplaced syllable, one accidental glance, and her name could be systematically scrubbed from the ledgers of this world. A ghost unremembered even by the constellations that glittered coldly beyond the towering windows. This was a realm where erasure was a power, not just a consequence. Inside, the grand chandeliers didn't merely illuminate. They blazed with a fierce, golden light, an opulent torrent pouring across the pristine marble floors, acting less like decoration and more like a stark, glittering warning. This was the sanctum where men of immeasurable influence convened, shaping the destinies of nations and industries while meticulously ensuring their own hands remained unblemished by the grime of their machinations. Kendra, a stark contrast to this gilded opulence, tugged at the unforgiving, stiff red vest of her uniform, its coarse fabric biting into her ribs. Every extra hour toiling at the Skyline Club wasn't just a shift. It was a lifeline. One more crucial dialysis session for her ailing mother. One more school invoice paid to keep her younger brother's future from slipping away. Her own dreams, once vibrant and demanding, had long since learned the bitter lesson of patience. But survival was a relentless, hungry beast that would not wait. Marco, the floor manager, a man whose permanent state of nervous agitation was etched into his every gesture, leaned in close, his grin a strained mask that never quite reached the fear-haunted depths of his eyes. His bow tie, impeccably tied, felt less like an accessory and more like a noose cinched tight around his throat. "Reed, listen," he hissed, his voice barely a whisper, yet infused with an almost desperate urgency. "This is a different crowd tonight. High stakes, incredibly important families. When the Mancinis arrive, you do not look up. You do not speak unless you are spoken to. You stay small, invisible." His whisper trembled, betraying a deep-seated terror, as if the very walls of the club, imbued with the secrets they witnessed, were eager to report his transgression. Everyone in Brooklyn, from the roughest docks to the most exclusive brownstones, knew that name, Mancini. Some lauded them as generous community builders, philanthropists who sponsored scholarships and youth centers, painting a picture of benevolent titans. Others, however, spoke in hushed, furtive tones, hinting at contracts that were never questioned and problems that simply vanished like smoke into the city's vast, indifferent sky. In the close confines of barbershops and dimly lit social clubs, conversations would abruptly lower, heads inclining conspiratorially, when stories were told of men who smiled with disarming kindness, yet held half the city's very pulse firmly in their grip. Kendra, her own heart a frantic drum against her ribs, lifted a heavy silver tray laden with crystal flutes of champagne, their delicate edges rattling with a sound that mimicked her own accelerating heartbeat. She fought to anchor herself, a silent mantra echoing in her mind. Fear cannot feed my family. Fear cannot pay the bills. Stepping through the plush velvet curtain, she entered a world that, by its very design, had no expectation for her to matter. Soft jazz, a sophisticated, sinuous melody, curled through the air, weaving its way through hushed conversations like a well-kept secret. Men in immaculately tailored suits, their silk ties gleaming, and women adorned with diamonds that seemed as casual and abundant as breath, moved with an air of effortless superiority. They barely registered the black waitress, a fleeting shadow deftly navigating the labyrinth of their expensive chairs. They saw only service, a necessary cog in the machinery of their pleasure. They did not see the fierce, unyielding intelligence simmering behind her calm, observant eyes. They did not see the granite-like resilience forged from years of scraping by, fighting for every inch of dignity in a city that seemed determined to render her perpetually invisible. The distant, almost musical chime of the elevator at the end of the opulent hall pierced the low hum of conversation. The room's collective chatter thinned into a reverent, almost deferential quiet, as though the very oxygen itself had bowed in anticipation. A distinguished older man emerged first, his white hair meticulously combed, each strand a testament to precision and control. A heavy gold ring glinted on the hand that gripped a cane, its silver wolf-head pommel gleaming under the chandelier's fierce light. His presence wasn't just noticed. It rearranged the entire social topography of the room, transforming a casual, exclusive party into an unspoken ceremony. Kendra, drilled to maintain an unwavering focus on her task, had no intention of lifting her gaze. Yet, for one suspended, almost ethereal instant, her eyes, drawn by an invisible force, rose above the shimmering landscape of champagne flutes. They collided with his. Authority, ancient and formidable, stared back at her. A profound sense of history etched into every line of his face. And then, something else, something primal, an ancient flicker, ignited in his stare, as if he recognized a lineage, a hidden bloodline, she never knew she carried. The older man's gaze, sharp and incisive, locked onto Kendra, a look that felt carved from millennia-old stone. He spoke, his voice a low, resonant rumble, in a Sicilian dialect so old, so guarded, that it seemed to carry the very sound of buried history within its syllables. It was a greeting, a challenge, meant only for those born into an ancient, unbroken legacy. A quiet dare wrapped in a velvet threat. His words, distinct and cutting, sliced through the soft jazz, settling over Kendra like a heavy, unexpected cloak she had never asked to wear. Her heart, a trapped bird, quivered in her chest. Then, something astonishing, something almost miraculous, happened. A muscle memory, older than her own life, stirred and rose from a place deep within her, a place she barely understood. It was the faint, comforting echo of her grandmother's hum, a gentle melody accompanying the rhythmic stirring of Sunday sauce in a well-worn pot. It was the warmth those very syllables had infused into their tiny kitchen, a sunshine against the biting cold of winter. Without conscious thought, without even a flicker of permission, Kendra answered him back. Flawless Sicilian, the vowels rolling off her tongue with a soft, precise cadence. Her voice, though steady and respectful, held an undeniable, almost audacious boldness. Silence didn't just fall. It exploded around her. Sound seemed to drain from the room, receding like a tide pulling away from a deserted shore. The jazz, a moment ago so alive, simply stopped breathing. Glasses caught mid-clink, stilled. Heads, heavy with the weight of luxury and influence, slowly lifted. Every single person in that opulent room stared at the black waitress who had just crossed an invisible, yet profoundly sacred line. None of them dared to approach her. This was the language of blood loyalty, of sacred lineage, spoken with casual mastery by a girl they had believed existed only to carry their plates. Don Enzo, his surprise palpable, straightened, his spine rigid, his posture transforming into an unyielding column of power. His hand, as if in involuntary reflex, tightened around the silver wolf-head pommel of his cane, its polished surface cool beneath his fingers. His eyes, no longer dismissive, inspected her not as a mere servant, but as a genuine revelation, a prophecy suddenly manifest. A flicker of suspicion ignited first, sharp and discerning, quickly followed by a spark of intrigue, then something far deeper, a recognition that touched the ancient roots of his own being. He took a measured step forward, imbued with the slow, almost predatory confidence of a man who had shaped, and indeed conquered, countless lives with the mere flourish of a signature. Kendra, her every instinct screaming, fought desperately against the urge to shrink, to vanish back into the shadows. Shame and an unexpected surge of pride collided violently within her chest. She yearned to explain, to articulate that she had been raised in a world where honoring elders was paramount, a sacred duty. She wanted to apologize for knowing too much, for speaking a language that wasn't hers to claim in this setting. But a nascent, fierce courage held her firm. Apology, she realized with a bitter clarity, was a language she was utterly tired of speaking. He questioned her again in Sicilian, his voice now softer, more nuanced, yet heavier still with an unspoken expectation. Asterisk chi say, asterisk, asterisk who are you, asterisk, the words resonated. A demand for a truth that no one else in the room could possibly comprehend. Her response, though uttered with conscious humility, trembled slightly. I am here to serve wine, sir. The lie, fragile and translucent, was far too small to conceal the towering truth that now shone, undeniable, behind her eyes. The temperature of the room seemed to shift, subtly but profoundly. Don Enzo turned, his voice expanding, deepening, claiming the entire room with its authority. Asterisk, resta accanto a me. She stays next to me. Asterisk, the decree descended like a judge's gavel, final and absolute. A wave of gasps and hushed murmurs rippled through the air, a mingling scent of expensive perfume and the faint squeak of polished shoes. Marco, his face now bleached white with terror, stumbled forward, a silent, desperate plea in his eyes. Servers exchanged wide-eyed, panicked glances, suddenly too terrified even to draw a breath. Guests, those paragons of privilege, leaned perceptibly away from Kendra, as if power itself were a highly contagious ailment, and she had somehow, without consent, contracted it. In the fleeting span of a single heartbeat, Kendra had transformed from an invisible shadow into something dangerously, electrifyingly visible. The spotlight, harsh and radiant, yet utterly ruthless, pinned her in place. She instinctively sensed that one more step, one more choice, could either elevate her into a life she could never have dreamed, or plunge her into a darkness from which no one escaped. Yet, as her hands, by some miracle, steadied around the champagne tray, she grasped one profound truth with stunning clarity. Every decision from this moment forward would not be about survival, but about destiny. It would decide whether she was claimed by fear, or claimed by something far, far greater. When Don Enzo, his voice an echo of ancient authority, commanded Kendra to remain by his side, the very world around her seemed to contract, the gilded walls of the Skyline Club drawing inward as if determined to prevent her escape. She followed him, a silent, solitary figure moving toward the illustrious head table, each measured step a stark reminder that this fragile, breathtaking moment possessed the power to define the entire trajectory of her life. The chandelier light, once a warning, now poured down over her simple uniform like a relentless spotlight, cruelly revealing every buried fear, every vulnerability she had ever tried to conceal. Her hands, calloused from years of silent labor, tightened around the tray, her fingers steady, not from calm, but from the deep-seated muscle memory forged by years of responsibility and sacrifice. It was then that Luca Mancini appeared. His presence was not merely an entrance, it was an atmospheric event, as if the very sun and air had been reshaped by his arrival. Don Enzo's power, formidable as it was, felt like a force earned through decades of patient influence and ironclad decisions. Luca's, however, felt sharp, undeniably modern, and chillingly merciless. His gaze swept over Kendra, not with idle curiosity, but with a cold, calculating analysis, as if he were already quantifying the precise risk she posed simply by existing in his sphere. Remarkable, he murmured, his tone effortless and smooth, yet carrying a chilling, diamond-hard precision. Most would not dare to speak to my father in the old tongue. It is a language reserved for those who belong to something truly sacred. His eyes narrowed, a glint of cold fascination shining within their depths. Tell me, he continued, his voice dropping slightly, how did a waitress learn what only blood should know? Kendra, feeling as though she were gathering precious, fragile scraps of courage, collected her voice. My grandmother taught me, she explained, her voice soft but steady. While we cooked dinner, she always said, home is not a place, it is carried in the heart. The memory, bittersweet, brought a fleeting warmth to her, a faint flicker of belonging in a room that had offered her nothing but cold judgment. Luca's head tilted infinitesimally, a subtle gesture that conveyed both impressed acknowledgement and a palpable threat. Your grandmother must have been a woman of extraordinary strength, he mused, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. That dialect. It comes from a time when loyalty was thicker than fear, when a name could either save you or destroy you. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked onto hers. Which side of that history do you think you stand on? Her breath hitched, a fragile tremor, before she answered. I stand where she raised me to stand, on my own 2 feet. Don Enzo, a silent observer throughout this tense exchange, watched her with a gaze that seemed to search for ghosts, for echoes of a distant past. His silence was profoundly eloquent, signifying that he recognized something he could not yet fully name. His hand flexed, almost imperceptibly, on his cane, the slightest tremble betraying that her very existence was forcing open a door he had believed long sealed, forever locked away. Luca leaned forward, a predatory grace in his movement, switching effortlessly back into Sicilian. His words rolled out, smooth as velvet, yet underpinned by the unyielding strength of steel. Asterisk, capisci quello che dissimo ora? Asterisk. Asterisk, do you understand what we are saying now? Asterisk. It was a quiet test, a veiled threat cleverly disguised as a compliment. Kendra met his gaze, acknowledging the room, the palpable danger, the uncertain future pressing in from every side. Then, in the same protected, ancient language, she replied, asterisk, capisco abbastanza per sapere che dovrei stare attenta. Asterisk. Asterisk, I understand enough to know that I should be careful. Asterisk, for a brief, unguarded moment, Luca's usual mask of unflappable control slipped, revealing a flash of genuine surprise. But calculation, sharp and relentless, quickly returned, even more incisive than before. He turned to his father, his whisper so low it was meant only for Mancini ears. Yet Kendra's heightened senses caught a chilling pair of words. Asterisk sangue prova. Asterisk, asterisk blood and proof. Asterisk her heartbeat stumbled. A sudden, terrifying lurch. Luca straightened, imbued with the unshakable certainty of a man accustomed to extracting answers, no matter the cost. We will confirm who she is, he stated, his voice calm, controlled, and utterly terrifying. Don Enzo's eyes, fixed on Kendra, gleamed with a complex mixture of fragile hope and nascent danger. A combination that threatened to redefine the very meaning of family forever. Kendra stood caught between them, no longer just a server, but a living secret, poised on the precipice of revelation. The oppressive weight of the entire room pressed against her chest, a physical burden. Yet, within that crushing pressure, one profound truth lived and breathed. Sometimes, destiny doesn't merely knock at your door. Sometimes it calls to you in a language you forgot you knew. Kendra's pulse hammered in her ears, a frantic rhythm accompanying Don Enzo's question that still lingered heavily between them. Asterisk, de dove viene tua nonna? Asterisk. Asterisk, where is your grandmother from? Asterisk, his voice, deep and resonant, carried the immense weight of ancestry. A stark reminder that in this room, lineage and legacy mattered more than the simple act of drawing breath. Kendra, summoning a strength she didn't know she possessed, lifted her chin slightly, choosing truth over the paralyzing grip of fear, choosing fierce love over complicit silence. My grandmother's name is Amelia Ferrari, she declared, each syllable leaving her lips with a reverence usually reserved for prayer, as though she were lighting a sacred candle in honor of the woman who had, in every sense, raised her heart. From Palermo, the transformation in the room was immediate, visceral. Tension snapped through the air like the crack of a whip. The guests, who moments ago had dismissed her as a mere background figure, now stared, their casual curiosity sharpening into a keen, almost predatory interest. Conversations, once a murmuring river, dissolved into anxious, incredulous whispers. The name Ferrari, ancient and powerful, spilled into the air like the ghost of a legend, long denied its rightful story. No one, not a single soul, had anticipated hearing that formidable legacy rise from the voice of a young black waitress, a woman who battled daily just to string together enough money to survive. Don Enzo's eyes widened, a fragile tremor passing through them as he was assailed by memories he had meticulously buried deep beneath layers of power and pride. Ferrari, he repeated softly, the word a confluence of prayer and confession, both a plea and an admission. Our families once stood united, bound by an unbreakable trust, by an unyielding loyalty, by blood itself. He paused, a profound grief coiling in the silence, until a different, corrosive force emerged. Until greed, he finished, his voice raw, ripped us apart. Luca leaned forward, his intensity sharpening every angular line of his aristocratic face. The Ferraris, he explained, his voice hushed but resonant, commanded the shipping empire that connected continents. Their trade routes fed entire cities and built unimaginable fortunes. They literally held the sea in their hands. His tone darkened perceptibly. That kind of power is never lost quietly. Kendra's heart tightened, a painful knot in her chest. She thought of her grandmother, Amelia, cleaning other people's homes, her hands worn and calloused, just to afford the rent for their cramped apartment. She recalled the quiet, almost imperceptible pain Amelia carried whenever someone, however innocently, mentioned Sicily. She realized now with a gut-wrenching clarity that the past her grandmother had seemingly abandoned had, in fact, never abandoned them. She rarely spoke about her old life, Kendra offered, her voice softening, imbued with the protective tenderness of a daughter defending someone she deeply loved. She told me that some places welcome you only until you dare to belong. She chose family over power. The memory, a blend of profound admiration and aching sorrow, made her chest ache. Whispers surged across the opulent table, a cacophony of hushed revelations. Asterisk blood oath, betrayal, lost daughter, a history carved in wounds. Asterisk Kendra felt every gaze, sharp and assessing, weighing exactly where she fit into this precarious space between stark truth and imminent danger. She had walked into this room, a mere servant seeking overtime pay, and now she stood irrevocably at the crossroads of a dynasty. Luca's stare turned cold, calculating. The mind of a seasoned strategist dissecting a complex problem, searching for answers no one in the room truly wanted spoken aloud. If she speaks the truth, he began, his voice slow and deliberate, knowing that each word would reshape countless destinies. Then Kendra Reed is the last living Ferrari heir, and those who stole what belonged to the Ferraris will not forgive her existence. The name Rizzo, a venomous, sibilant sound, slithered into the conversation. A family infamous for seizing what was not rightfully theirs. They had devoured the vast empire that once belonged to Amelia's bloodline, leaving only ruin in their wake. And now the rightful inheritance stood before them, living and breathing. Don Enzo's expression shifted profoundly. Not just surprise, not just suspicion, but something deeper. Something akin to hope, a fragile, desperate redemption attempting to find its way home. An unexpected strength surged within Kendra's chest, a profound sense of self-possession. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer small. She carried within her the fierce courage of a woman who had crossed oceans for her future and for the future of her children. Destiny, it seemed, had found her, and this time, she would not run from it. The very atmosphere around Kendra shifted, turning sharp, territorial, and overtly dangerous. Moments before, she had been a phantom, unseen and unnoticed. Now she was seen too clearly, judged too harshly. Her very existence weighed and measured like a rare, illicit coin discovered in the wrong pocket. The powerful families arrayed around the table assessed her worth not by the depth of her character or the resilience of her spirit, but by the sheer, terrifying influence she might, by right of blood, inherit. It was as though destiny, with a cruel and elegant hand, had placed her squarely on a chessboard where she had never, not once, agreed to play. From her seat, a woman in an emerald green gown, shimmering with understated extravagance, rose. Her movements, while undeniably elegant, dripped with an almost palpable disdain. Aunt Teresa, the very embodiment of inherited privilege, had sharpened her entitlement into a weapon of chilling cruelty. Her chin tilted impossibly high, as if the very air beneath her refused to rise to her exalted level. This situation is utterly unacceptable, she announced, her voice a sharp, cutting edge. A girl like her is meant to serve at the table, not sit at it, let alone stand beside it. The insult struck Kendra hard, a blow delivered with surgical precision. She had endured prejudice before, its familiar sting a constant companion in sterile classrooms, bustling diners, and the endless, fluorescent-lit corridors of hospital waiting rooms. But this humiliation felt different, more insidious. It targeted her very roots, her inherent dignity, the core of her being that fought tirelessly, fiercely, for her family's survival. The ache that bloomed inside her chest was not shame. It was a fierce, rising fire, hot and incandescent. Before she could formulate a response, before the words could even solidify on her tongue, Luca stepped forward, his voice carving through the palpable tension with fierce, unyielding certainty. "We do not belittle those my father honors," he stated, his gaze sweeping across the room, leaving no doubt about his meaning. "Respect says more about us than it ever could about her." His defense landed squarely across her shoulders, a protective shield, a stark reminder that bravery sometimes manifests in the most unexpected of faces. For the first time tonight, amidst the glittering hostility, Kendra felt a profound sense of being less alone. Then, an urgent whisper, sharp and sudden, shattered the fragile moment of reprieve. A security agent, his face grim, delivered news directly into Luca's ear. The change in Luca's posture was instant, almost animalistic. His shoulders squared, his jaw clenched, his entire demeanor shifting into that of a man preparing to protect something utterly priceless. "The Rizzo family knows," he stated, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. The air in the room seemed to tighten, growing heavy with unspoken fear. "They are already searching for the Ferrari girl." A ripple of fear, cold and insidious, spread through the silk gowns and glittering diamonds. Heads snapped towards the various exits, guests suddenly realizing that a tangible lethal danger had breached their glamorous, supposedly impregnable walls. Teresa's voice, usually so imperious, dropped to a trembling, venomous hiss. "This is what you bring into our home," she accused Don Enzo, her eyes blazing with an almost hysterical terror. "Risk, scandal, a threat that could destroy us all." Don Enzo, seemingly unperturbed by her outburst, lifted his cane slightly, a silent assertion of his unwavering authority. His voice, though soft, carried the immense weight of decades of history and power. "We protect her. She bears no blame for the sins committed against her bloodline." Yet, beneath his calm authority, a barely perceptible tremor of worry betrayed him. Even Titans, Kendra realized, could feel the icy grip of fear when the past, long buried, demanded its terrifying payment. Luca stepped closer to Kendra, so near that his voice felt like a lifeline, a tangible anchor in the surging tide of danger. "Put down the tray," he instructed, his voice gentle, yet utterly unwavering. "You cannot remain exposed here. If you step beyond this room without protection, they will take you, and they will not hesitate." Her breath quivered, a fragile thing in her throat. Her mind flashed to her mother's tired yet ever-present smile after countless long hospital nights, to her younger brother's unwavering belief that she could achieve anything. She heard, as clearly as if Amelia herself stood beside her, her grandmother's quiet whisper. True courage is choosing love, even when the world chooses hate. Luca extended his hand. Not a command, but a silent, ironclad promise. "Come with me. Your safety is now our responsibility." Kendra, her fingers trembling uncontrollably, placed them into his steady palm. In that single, courageous choice, she stepped from a life defined by survival into a desperate, all-consuming fight for a legacy she was only just beginning to comprehend. She was no longer a shadow serving drinks in the corner. She was someone the world suddenly feared, and someone the world, in its desperate, intricate dance of power, desperately needed. City lights streaked across the panoramic windows of the black SUV, blurring into ephemeral trails like shooting stars, desperately trying to outrun the encroaching night. Inside, Kendra sat rigid and breathless, a statue of contained terror. New York, the city she had always called home, passed by in a dizzying kaleidoscope of neon flashes and fragmented memories. Yet, everything familiar now felt impossibly distant, alien. Every street she had once walked with a quiet, determined purpose now whispered her name, each whisper laced with a chilling undercurrent of danger. She had lived her entire life fighting to be seen, to be acknowledged. Tonight, she would have given anything, everything, to simply disappear. "You are under my protection now," Luca said, his voice steady, a tangible shield attempting to hold back an encroaching storm. "Until we understand what the Rizzos intend, you will not move through this world alone." His hand, strong and capable, rested near his concealed weapon, a silent, stark reminder that the threat was not a fanciful story meant to scare her. It was a hungry, merciless hunter already on her trail. Kendra's hands tightened into trembling fists, her knuckles white. "I have responsibilities," she choked out, her voice cracking with the raw grief of someone who had been strong for far too long. "My mother needs me. My brother relies on me. I did not ask for this life." Luca's eyes softened just enough, a fleeting glimpse that revealed the human, the man, beneath the hardened exterior. "You did not ask for danger," he conceded, his voice infused with a surprising compassion. "But it has found you. Let us face it first so you can live the future your family truly deserves." His words held a silent, unwavering promise, one he fully intended to keep. Protecting her had, in that moment, become far more than a duty. The sleek black SUV glided to a halt before a gleaming waterfront tower, its glass and steel facade piercing the night sky. Guards, silent and precise, opened the heavy, soundproof doors. To the outside world, this penthouse was the epitome of luxury, a gleaming monument to wealth and power. To Kendra, however, it was a golden cage, its freedom measured by biometric locks and bulletproof glass. Safety delivered, yes, but at a spiritual cost that choked her very spirit. "This is not living," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a profound ache in her chest. "This is captivity, dressed in diamonds." "It is temporary," Luca replied, his gaze unwavering. "We cannot lose you. The Ferraris lost everything once. We will not allow that to happen again." A security agent, his face grave, stepped forward, a tablet clutched in his hand. "We intercepted a digital breach," he announced, each word tightening the air, making it heavy with dread. Someone targeted her mother's medical records. The fear in Kendra's chest sharpened, transforming into a searing, agonizing blade. "What hospital? I need to get to her." Her body instinctively leaned towards the exit, instinct surging far stronger than any caution. Luca caught her forearm, his grip careful yet urgent. "Listen to me," he commanded, his voice imbued with authority, but his grip tempered by compassion. "You are not safe anywhere outside these walls. Your mother would want you alive. Alive long enough to claim everything that was stolen from your family." The agent swallowed hard, his eyes filled with a painful sympathy, then delivered the blow that shattered what little childhood hope Kendra had left. "Your mother passed away 2 hours ago. They tried to reach you, but lockdown protocols had already begun." The world, already reeling, fell utterly silent. Grief, raw and merciless, surged through her like a tidal wave, drowning everything in its path. A lifetime of sacrifice and unconditional love flickered before her eyes. Her mother's gentle laugh, her worn, hard-working hands, her brave, unwavering smile from a hospital bed she never deserved. Kendra's knees buckled, her heart screamed, a raw, primal sound trapped within a cage of bone and cruel destiny. Luca stood close, his voice lowered with a profound respect. "I am sorry." 2 simple words, yet they carried the unbearable weight of 1,000 apologies she would never hear again. A broken sob, a terrible, wrenching sound, slipped from her chest. But beneath the profound heartbreak, a fierce, unyielding fire ignited. Her mother had fought for every single breath she had. Now Kendra would fight for every breath she had left. She wiped her tears with a trembling hand, her gaze, though still clouded with sorrow, hardening into an unbreakable resolve. She would not allow the world, this cruel, indifferent world, to decide the value of her life or her legacy. Her mother's journey was over. Hers, however, had only just begun. The night, vast and indifferent, framed itself around the penthouse windows, a poignant painting of loneliness. Kendra stood there, her eyes swollen and red, yet burning with a fierce, untamed fire, staring out at a city that never paused long enough to truly notice a breaking heart. Below her, the Hudson River shimmered, its dark waters carrying secrets and the promise of second chances in every rolling wave. She pressed her palms against the cold glass, grounding herself, finding a strange solace in the stark truth that she was still breathing, still standing, even though life had just torn a profound piece from her heart. Luca approached with slow, measured steps. He did not speak like a man accustomed to delivering orders or issuing demands. He spoke like someone who understood, intimately, that pain could forge and shape a person more profoundly than destiny ever would. "Your grandmother carried a love that frightened the world she came from," he began, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "And for that, she was punished." Kendra turned toward him, her eyes, raw and vulnerable, silently begging for honesty, for clarity, for any reason to believe that her immense suffering had purpose. "Tell me," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper, "who she really was." Luca inhaled slowly, deeply, as though bracing himself to open a door that had been sealed for decades, its secrets gathering dust. "Amelia Ferrari fell in love with a black soldier who had served with honor after the war," he revealed, his gaze steady, unwavering. "Their love was powerful, bold. It defied traditions that were meticulously crafted to keep power in certain hands, and dignity confined to certain bloodlines." He paused, emotions flickering like distant embers behind his eyes. "The elders saw her love as a direct threat. They demanded she choose her heart or her heritage. The words settled heavily in Kendra's chest, a profound weight. She finally understood why her grandmother, Amelia, had always looked at her with such a complex blend of pride and an almost unbearable sorrow. Amelia had willingly, courageously, left behind a life of unimaginable luxury and boundless influence, not for mere survival, but for a love so undeniable, so utterly true, that she would rather lose everything than betray the man who had seen, truly seen, her humanity. They forced her to vanish from the records. Luca continued, his voice tightening, imbued with a quiet anger on Amelia's behalf. They systematically erased her name from the family she had helped build, from the legacy she was born into. They pretended she never belonged to that power. It was not justice. It was fear. Your grandmother was not rejected because she lacked worth. She was rejected because she dared to love across lines drawn by ignorant hands. Tears, hot and cleansing, warmed Kendra's cheeks. She was not merely the product of endurance, of resilience forged in hardship. She was the luminous product of two brave souls who had dared to challenge prejudice with the most powerful weapon of all, love. And Don Enzo? Luca added quietly, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. He remembered her. He remembers the pain of letting her go. He believed he had no choice then, but regret has lived under his skin, a constant, nagging torment, every single day since. The very room seemed to breathe with her, sharing her pain, her revelation. Kendra felt a nascent, powerful strength blooming from the deep, ragged cracks of her sorrow. She straightened her shoulders, a defiant, regal posture. In her heart, she heard her grandmother's voice, clear as a bell, speaking the words she had always whispered. Asterisk, stand tall, my girl. You come from strength. Asterisk, I am not invading this world, Kendra declared, her voice trembling slightly, yet utterly unbreakable, resonant with newfound purpose. I am reclaiming what was stolen. Luca nodded slowly, respectfully, seeing not a waitress, not a girl, but a woman rising inexorably into her rightful birthright. Your grandmother gave up her crown to protect love, he stated, his voice a low, solemn promise. Now you will honor her by taking back what belongs to you. Kendra lifted her chin, wiping away the last of her tears. Her mother's unwavering love lived vibrantly in her heartbeat. Her grandmother's fierce courage coursed, undeniable, through her very blood. And now, justice, a burning righteous flame, lived in her purpose. The world had tried to write her family out of history, but she was here now to rewrite it. The penthouse lights shimmered like distant, unapproachable stars, yet Kendra felt herself suspended, weightless and alone. In a universe still deliberating whether to embrace her or cast her out into the cold void. Her fingertips brushed the cool surface of the windowsill, an unconscious effort to steady a heart that had endured an impossible weight of loss in a single, shattering night. She found herself wondering if belonging was merely a comforting story people told themselves, a fragile myth to make the vast, indifferent world feel a little less lonely. It was then that the door opened, silently, and Rosa stepped inside. Her presence was something ancient, carved from decades of unwavering grace and steadfast devotion. Her silver curls, fine as spun moonlight, framed a face that had witnessed the ebb and flow of countless loves and profound losses. Her eyes, warm and comforting as a grandmother's whispered lullaby, landed on Kendra with a recognition so immediate, so visceral, that it seemed to steal the very breath from the opulent room. Rosa drew closer, each deliberate step heavy with accumulated memory. Those eyes, she murmured, her voice swelling with an emotion so deep it bordered on pain. I would know them anywhere. Your grandmother carried the same spark, strong, untouched by fear, ready to rise. Kendra's tears, unbidden, returned, flowing freely, unabashedly. You knew her, she said quietly, her voice imbued not with mere curiosity, but with a fragile, desperate hope. Rosa nodded, her hand, trembling slightly, reaching out to gently cradle Kendra's cheek. I didn't just know her, Kara, she whispered, her voice thick with shared history. I loved her like a sister. I stood beside her when she was forced to choose exile over a life where her heart would face retribution. Her voice, a fragile echo of the girl she once was, wavered with an enduring, paradoxical love for the ancestral home that had violently cast her out. Kendra closed her eyes, the golden light of the room now illuminating the vivid landscapes of memory behind her lids. She could almost taste the rich, pungent scent of garlic and the sweet, herbaceous whisper of basil, wafting from her grandmother's sun-drenched kitchen in Sicily. She could hear Amelia's gentle melodic humming, a wordless symphony that had once filled the silences no one else understood, a language of resilience and longing. Every simple lesson Amelia had ever imparted, every quiet wisdom shared across generations, now coalesced into a profound understanding, as if her entire life had been an intricate preparation for this very instant. From the deep pocket of her flowing dress, Rosa drew forth a necklace. It wasn't merely an adornment. It possessed an almost luminous quality, glowing softly, imbued with a quiet power in the room's warm, golden embrace. The pendant was a masterful fusion, a delicate outline of Sicily, the island of fierce beauty and ancient ties, intricately interwoven with the majestic, sprawling shape of Africa. It was more than gold and silver. It was history forged in the crucible of courage, a testament to migrations, struggles, and triumphs. It was heritage, meticulously stitched together by a love that, despite every attempt to sever it, refused to break. She asked me to guard this, for you, Rosa murmured, her gnarled fingers carefully fastening the clasp around Kendra's neck. The pendant settled against her pulse, a silent promise whispered across time, until the day her bloodline returned to the place where it was meant to lead. Rosa paused, her voice thick with an emotion so profound it bordered on reverence. You don't just carry Amelia's face, child. You embody her purpose. You are her dream, made vibrantly, undeniably real. Kendra's hand instinctively rose, her fingers gently pressing against the cool metal of the pendant. A sudden, deep warmth pulsed beneath her fingertips, a current of ancestral energy flowing through her. In that sacred touch, she felt the immense weight of generations, the quiet dignity of countless sacrifices she had never known, yet now intrinsically understood. All her life, she had believed she was merely trying to survive, navigating a world that often sought to diminish her. But now, in this luminous instant, she understood with crystalline clarity. She was born not just to survive, but to reclaim a profound legacy, one stolen by the cruel hands of fear and the insidious poison of prejudice. Rosa's arms wrapped around her, a protective, tender embrace that seemed to mend the lingering fractures grief had left behind in Kendra's soul. "You belong here, Mia Cara?" Rosa whispered into Kendra's hair, her words a balm. "Not as a server, not as a guest, but as family, as the heart of it." The necklace lay against Kendra's heart, a tangible vow. The raw ache of her past did not miraculously vanish, but now, a love deeper and undeniably stronger flowed through her, anchoring her to a future her grandmother had always, faithfully, prayed she would find. Kendra lifted her chin, her gaze steady, alight with a quiet, unyielding determination. She was not a mere character, a guest in someone else's narrative. No, she was the very reason the story continued. The first tendrils of morning light crept into the room, a fragile, hesitant promise against the encroaching darkness. Yet, an oppressive dread still clung to the air, thick and cloying. Kendra sat, clutching the luminous necklace Rosa had placed over her heart, her silent prayers fervent, desperate, that the burgeoning hope it symbolized would not be violently snatched away. She had only just begun to believe, to allow herself to feel anchored to something greater than a relentless struggle. Now the world outside roared and thundered at her door, seemingly determined to rip apart that fragile, nascent belief. A sudden, shrill alarm sliced through the hushed tension, ripping the morning calm in two. One of the guards, a burly man whose usual composure was legendary, answered his device. His face, usually a mask of controlled vigilance, instantly drained of all color, his expression contorting into pure, unadulterated terror. "They located the grandmother," he rasped, the words barely audible. Every beat of Kendra's heart slammed against her ribs, a frantic drum against bone. She staggered to her feet, the sudden lurch making the room swim. "Where is she?" she demanded, her voice raw, laced with an agonizing fear. "Tell me she's safe." "Rizzo men. They've breached the hospital wing," the guard replied, his voice strained. "They are trying to extract her now." Extract. The word itself was a shard of ice, a cold, clinical term for an act of unspeakable cruelty. Kendra's breath fractured, shattered by the horrific image. Her grandmother, frail and weary, had endured a lifetime of running, a relentless pursuit that had stolen her home, her profound love, her vibrant youth, all sacrificed to the unforgiving maw of prejudice. Now, these men, ravenous for power, saw Amelia not as a human being, but as a mere pawn, a tool to break Kendra's spirit. Tears, hot and furious, blurred the edges of Kendra's vision, threatening to overwhelm her. Luca stepped forward, a presence as solid and reassuring as the ground beneath her. "My team is already en route," he stated, his voice a low, steady rumble. "They will not let anyone take her." His words carried a promise, cold and hard as steel, yet the subtle clenching of his jaw, the taut line of his shoulders, revealed the stark, terrifying danger they all faced. Kendra held his gaze, her own eyes burning with a terrible guilt. "They are after her because of me?" she whispered, the taste of iron bitter in her mouth. "If she gets hurt, I will never forgive myself." "No," Luca said, his hand warm and firm on her shoulder, an anchor in the storm. "She raised a granddaughter who stands up when the world tries to bury her. That is not a burden, Kendra. That is legacy." The security monitor flickered violently, then lurched to life. On the screen, a chaotic, frantic hospital corridor appeared, bathed in the sterile glare of fluorescent lights. Machines lay overturned on the floor, wires snaking like severed veins. Shouts, desperate and terrified, echoed, distorted and tinny through the speaker. Then, Kendra saw her, her grandmother, Amelia, on a rolling bed, propelled with terrifying speed. She looked frail, impossibly small, her expression confused, but her eyes, even through the grainy footage, showed a fierce, stubborn fight to stay awake, to resist. Two burly Rizzo men, faces grim and determined, closed in, their intent mercilessly clear. Kendra pressed her palm against the cold glass of the screen, a futile gesture. Fear surged through her bones, a primal storm roaring within. "Save her, please," she begged, her voice a desperate, choked cry. Suddenly, a volley of gunfire tore through the audio, sharp and brutal. The camera jolted violently, then stabilized just as the bed was wheeled at a desperate sprint toward a back exit. From the shadows, Mancini guards burst forth, a wave of protectors, shielding Amelia with their bodies, moving with swift, practiced precision. They lifted her, with surprising gentleness, into the waiting maw of an armored vehicle. Doors slammed shut with deafening finality. Tires screamed against asphalt, leaving streaks of rubber on the ground. The escape was a gasp of breath, vital and life-giving, to a drowning soul. "She is secure," a guard announced, his voice raspy with relief. Kendra collapsed into Rosa's waiting arms, shaking uncontrollably, a tumultuous mix of profound relief and aching heartbreak. The tears that streamed down her cheeks were fierce, untamed, born from a love that, against all odds, refused to die. In that moment, she understood with a devastating clarity. She would give anything, sacrifice everything, to protect the woman who had spent her entire life protecting her. As the armored van sped away on the monitor, dwindling into a pixelated, the camera caught a fleeting image. A lone, silhouetted figure observing from a rooftop across the street. He wore a suit as dark and unyielding as judgment itself. The glint on his belt, though small, was unmistakable, the distinct, etched letters of the FBI. They were not merely bystanders. They had not been watching by accident. They had been meticulously tracking Rizzo's movements for a long, arduous time. And now, Kendra's very existence, her undeniable presence, was pulling long-buried secrets from the deepest shadows, forcing them into the unforgiving light. She wiped her tears, not with a gesture of surrender, but with a fierce, renewed resolve. The fear that had threatened to consume her now sharpened, honed into an unwavering courage. "They will not take our family again," she whispered, her voice a steel-edged promise. "Not while I still have breath to fight." The once welcoming walls of the safe house now felt colder, imbued with a chilling sense of betrayal that could seep into even the warmest room. Kendra stood, her shoulders squared, a portrait of defiance. Her pulse might have been unsteady, a frantic drumbeat beneath her skin, but her spirit, forged in hardship, remained utterly unbroken. This struggle had transcended mere luxury or the complexities of lineage. Now it was about truth, raw, undeniable truth, rising with fierce urgency above those who had tried so desperately to bury it. Carlo was dragged in, his wrists bound, but an almost comical arrogance still clung to him, offensive and cheap like stale cologne. He lifted his chin with a smug, self-satisfied smile, as if the room, despite his capture, still belonged to him, as if he hadn't just callously sold out the very family that had sheltered him. Luca, though outwardly composed, seethed with a barely contained fury that simmered beneath his calm exterior, his eyes burning with controlled fire. "You gave Rizzo unfettered access to the hospital," Luca accused, his voice dangerously low. "You nearly cost an innocent woman her life." Carlo merely smirked, a sneer twisting his lips. "Business is business, Luca, and your precious waitress should have simply stayed in her place." His voice dripped with condescension, laced with an almost casual disdain. He then turned his venomous glare to Kendra, his eyes a weapon. "Women like you serve drinks, little girl. You do not sit at the table. You are furniture easily replaced." The words struck Kendra hard, reverberating through her like a physical blow. They echoed every single injustice, every demeaning comment she and countless women like her had been forced to swallow in their lives. But Kendra did not shrink. She had survived crushing poverty, endured harsh judgment, and navigated the treacherous landscape of heartbreak. Cruel words, no matter how sharp, could not break what life had already reforged in fire. Carlo's smile widened, a triumphant leer, when she didn't react. "You think a forgotten name makes you important? It doesn't change who you are." He leaned forward, his voice cutting, sharp as a razor's edge. "You are nothing." A suffocating silence cracked open around them, heavy with Carlo's venom. But this time, Kendra absolutely refused to let that silence signify surrender. Before she could utter a single word, Luca's hand slammed a folder onto the polished table, the resounding crack echoing through the room. The papers inside fanned out, scattering like undeniable, irrefutable truth. "Enough," Luca commanded, his voice shaking the air. "You forget who you are speaking to." He pointed a rigid finger at the document. "These are DNA results, verified by multiple independent experts. Kendra Reed is a Ferrari by blood, the rightful heir." Carlo's face, moments ago so smug, collapsed into a mask of pure shock, his breath catching in his throat. His confidence, brittle and false, withered and crumbled before their very eyes. The guard beside him, sensing Carlo's sudden, visceral fear, tightened his grip on the traitor's arm. Luca leaned closer, his voice low, a thunderous whisper that vibrated with righteous indignation. "You betrayed family, Carlo, to impress men who would never truly value you. And yet, the woman you so casually insult dares to rise higher than you could ever have dreamt." Rosa, ever the pillar of strength, stepped forward and placed a steady, comforting hand on Kendra's back. Her touch was a potent reminder, a silent blessing, a tangible legacy wrapping its arms around her. Kendra drew a slow, fortifying breath, her spirit solidifying. Then, she walked towards Carlo, not with hatred in her eyes, but with a powerful, serene grace that amplified his diminished state. "All my life," Kendra began, her voice steady and clear, "people tried to tell me what I was worth. They tried to dictate my value, to assign me a place." She placed her hand over the glowing necklace resting at her heart, its warmth spreading through her. "But worth is not something others decide for us. It is something we inherit, yes, a gift from those who came before, but it is also something we choose to live up to, every single day." Her voice did not crack. Instead, it soared, filled with an undeniable conviction. "You tried to make me feel small, Carlo," she said, her gaze unwavering as it met his. "But all you did was make my purpose louder." Carlo, his bravado utterly shattered, looked away, hollowed by the undeniable truth of her words. Kendra turned back to Luca, a new, radiant strength radiating through her every pore, in every word she spoke. "I am done apologizing for existing." For the very first time, the room, heavy with history and power, bowed, not to a venerated name, but to the woman who carried it with such profound courage and dignity. The night pressed against the towering windows of the study like a silent, expectant crowd, their hushed presence a palpable weight. Inside, Kendra stood before the desk, polished to a mirror sheen, that now held the key to everything she never knew she was destined to carry. Her fingers, fine and strong, trembled ever so slightly, not from fear, but from the overwhelming, electrifying weight of possibility that hummed in the air around her. This was more than just a room. It was a sacred space where truth itself chose its path, to liberate or to destroy. The leather-bound ledger, ancient and imposing, waited under the chandelier's soft, golden glow. Its covers were worn smooth by the passage of countless hands, etched with the silent stories of history, yet it remained unbowed, resilient against the relentless march of time. Luca opened it with almost reverent care, the thick, aged pages releasing a faint, evocative scent, a blend of salt, ink, and the distant tang of the sea. Inside, intricate routes were drawn across oceans, spiderwebbing the continents. Lists of shipments meticulously itemized, detailed the goods that had fed nations, built cities. Notes, Written in 2 languages, the lyrical cadence of Italian intertwined with the vibrant rhythm of an African tongue, lay layered with the stark poetry of survival and the shrewd strategy of commerce. It was a breathtaking roadmap, a testament to ambition, resilience, and a deep, abiding love carved through generations. This ledger, Kendra, this built the Ferrari empire, Luca said, his tone thick with profound respect, his eyes tracing the faded script. Your grandmother, Amelia, she protected it with her life. Now it belongs to you. Kendra hovered her hand above the parchment, a gesture of almost spiritual hesitation, as if merely touching it required the explicit permission of every single soul whose legacy was meticulously stitched into its brittle pages. She felt, acutely, the phantom heartbeat of ancestors who had crossed treacherous seas with nothing but unyielding courage in their chests. She saw with startling clarity the families who had sailed into new, often hostile, worlds, carrying the vibrant songs of resilience and hope on their tongues. She envisioned her grandmother's hands, steady, determined, loving, turning these very pages. These roots, Rosa said gently, her voice a soft caress, they supported our people. Work, food, freedom, a lifeline painstakingly created by those who steadfastly refused to disappear. Kendra swallowed a lump of raw emotion that threatened to choke her. And the Rizzo, she whispered, her voice laced with bitterness. They stole it to build their own cruel power. Yes, Luca replied, his gaze unwavering. But a throne stolen is a throne forever threatened, forever unstable. When you sign your name, Kendra, every port and every contract tied to this book returns to you. You change the entire game with one stroke of a pen. The room suddenly felt vast, expansive, as if its very walls understood that a queen now stood within them, her destiny unfolding. Kendra had spent her entire life being told to keep her head down, to quiet her brilliance, to serve silently while others arrogantly decided the future for her. But tonight, that silence would no longer serve anyone. Rosa stepped closer, placing the Sicily Africa necklace gently against Kendra's heart once more. A soft, encouraging pressure. Your grandmother dreamed of a world where her granddaughter would not have to beg for a seat at the table, Rosa murmured, her voice cracking, brimming with pride. She wanted you to build the table yourself. Kendra looked down at the blank signature line beneath Amelia's elegant, faded script. It waited patiently, like a torch, its flame flickering, offering its enduring light to the one brave enough to carry it forward. She lifted the pen, its cool weight grounding her. She thought of her mother, working until pure exhaustion, her body aching, all to protect a daughter she believed deserved the whole wide world. She thought of every single person who had ever been told they were less than what their heart knew they were meant to be. She thought of black excellence, forged through generations of unimaginable hardship, yet shining brighter, more fiercely, than any cruelty that had tried so desperately to dim it. Her hand no longer trembled, with a certainty that resonated through the quiet room, and with a profound grace that belied her past, she signed her name. In that instant, the ancient ledger transformed, no longer mere paper, but a tangible crown. She was no longer the girl serving tables to survive, invisible in plain sight. Kendra Reed stepped fully, wholly, into the magnificent destiny her ancestors had meticulously written for her. She was the Black Queen, undeniably, powerfully, rising. 1 year later, the harbor at Red Hook shimmered under the morning sun, a vibrant landscape of rebirth. Giant cranes, like graceful, metallic titans, danced above the glittering, cerulean water. Containers, emblazoned with the proud crest of Ferrari Unity Imports, stretched for miles across the docks. No longer symbols of crime and illicit trade, but pulsating veins of opportunity. This was commerce imbued with dignity, prosperity with profound purpose. And at the heart of it all stood Kendra. Once a waitress, scraping by on meager tips and unwavering faith, she was now a visionary leader, carrying the immense weight and boundless wonder of 2 continents on her shoulders. She still rose before sunrise, her dedication unwavering, still worked harder than the doubters ever expected. But now, every deliberate step she took, every decision she made, subtly, yet powerfully, shifted the trajectory of history toward justice. The Amelia Initiative, her brainchild, had already transformed countless lives. Hundreds of brilliant black students now earned coveted logistic scholarships, their futures shining with possibility. Families who once felt utterly invisible within the city's vast tapestry now saw their children, full of hope, boarding the very ships of possibility that had once carried their ancestors. Generations once forgotten, or deliberately erased, were now proudly stepping into a future that was rightfully theirs. All because one grandmother, Amelia, had stubbornly refused to apologize for loving beyond arbitrary borders. Amelia herself sat serenely in her wheelchair near the pier's edge, the gentle sunlight warming her face, illuminating the fierce sparkle in her eyes, the brilliant, defiant glow of survival. She looked upon Kendra with an awe so profound it brought tears to her own eyes. They tried to erase us, she whispered, her smile trembling with emotion. But you, Mia Naipote, you carved our names into tomorrow. Kendra knelt, her gaze meeting her grandmother's. You planted the roots, na, she replied softly, her voice thick with gratitude. I simply helped them rise. A tender silence softened the air between them, a communion of enduring love. Luca approached, no longer the watchful prince molded by fear, but a man profoundly reborn by witnessing true, transformative leadership. In his hand, he held a ring, ancient and worn, older than any betrayal, forged by ancestors who believed, fiercely, that love could, and would, outlive violence. His voice, now steady and resonant, filled with an unspoken depth of emotion, echoed across the pier. You are the fiercest, most remarkable chapter this family has ever written. May I honor you, Kendra Reed, as my partner in every victory ahead? For a moment, Kendra's mind swam with a rush of memories. Every cruel insult ever thrown at her, every grimy table she had meticulously cleaned, every door slammed shut in her face. She remembered the cold nights she walked home, whispering to herself that she mattered, even when no one else seemed to hear. And here she was, a queen they would not deny. Slowly, she moved to the small ornate ledger chest that held the heart of her legacy. The Sicily Africa necklace, now a potent symbol of unity, of black excellence, of survival stitched across oceans, rested inside. Kendra lifted it with reverence, her fingers tracing its familiar contours. She placed it gently on the table, not as jewelry, but like placing a crown upon a throne. Her whispered prayer, silent yet powerful, flowed through time, reaching every ancestor who had ever felt invisible. I am seen because of you. When she slid the ancient ring onto her finger, a wave of pure, unadulterated joy rippled through the crowd like thunder. Families that had once bowed to the insidious sway of corruption now applauded integrity. Power brokers who had once ruled through fear and intimidation now stood for fairness and equity. The city that had once overlooked her, deemed her insignificant, now looked up to her, their gaze filled with respect and burgeoning hope. Kendra stood tall, a magnificent bridge between worlds, a leader forged by resilience, a living reminder that true greatness often grows from the humblest of beginnings. Her voice, clear and strong, carried across the harbor like a sacred vow. True power does not destroy, true power restores, true power rises. An entire pier full of witnesses, stirred by her conviction, rose with her, their collective hope a palpable force. Because when one woman of courage stands firm, unequivocally, she lifts everyone. Kendra Reed, Queen of Two Worlds, Queen of Hope.